Brown says, get that India. Big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a police! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell killer!
Hello and welcome to our first official preview for the NRL season, New South Wales Cup season and Jersey Flegg season. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020, bringing you another episode of the Tip Sheet, not live, but pre-recorded. That's how it goes. Joining me for this massive preview podcast is my good mate, Sixties, big fella. We've previewed some, obviously, some junior rep games. We've previewed some of the trial games in the preseason. It's not quite the same as round one, is it?
No, it's not. And let's warn our listeners, or maybe warn's not the right word, because I'm sure it's all for their listening pleasure. But as we are now covering 7 grades in this preview, count it, 7 grades this week, this will be an extended podcast.
We'll try and err on the side of brevity as we can.
Yeah, of course. So we'll try to keep the waffle to a minimum. I know there are actually people out there who probably don't mind us going into great details. You crazy people out there, but we'll try to make sure that we do keep the content as specific, as brief as we can, so that we can get to that main event of the NRL, which will come towards the end of this podcast, the NRL preview.
Yes, well said, mate. And before we launch into that mammoth spread of games to preview, as always, this podcast is brought to you by Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Rowan and Parramatta, and Big Swing Golf, North Mead, and not to mention Parramatta Leagues Club, who are an incredible supporter of the Parramatta Junior District, as well as our coverage of the junior representative pathways. And 60s, before we get to the previews, one last thing. We will be live in it's not Jack's Bar and Grill. We have been live from Jack's Bar and Grill in the post-game functions across the last 2 seasons. We'll be in the bistro this year as it stands. So look forward to catching us after the Bulldogs game about a bit after 7, right? 7:30 maybe, 60s?
No, I think we're actually slotted in for 8 o'clock.
There you go,
because that's when we are going to present our 2 special guests, Eels legends, Steve Ella and David Lydiard. I'm really looking forward to that. They've been a couple of our favourite guests, as people know, from the past. So to kick the season off with them is brilliant for us. And there may be, it's a maybe, an extra special guest that we will be speaking to as well. So head up to the bistro. We're on from about 8 o'clock. And believe me, you won't be disappointed. You'll be able to not just have a feed, but you'll also be able to listen to those legends, and then afterwards have a chat with them, grab a photo, get anything signed that you need signed. And as I said, maybe stand by for a little bit of news on the potential additional guest.
Well said, mate. All right, let's get straight into the previews. It is a monster Saturday. They use the term Super Saturday, and I don't think that fits the bill this week. It kicks off at 9:45 a.m. out at Eric Tweedale Stadium with the Lisa Fiaola Cup. This is a top 4 clash. The second place Roosters, technically the home team here. I'm not sure how the metrics on that work, but they're taking on the Parramatta Eels, who are in 4th place. We know 60s at the Eels have been really warming to the task in the Lisa Fiaola, and they line up this week like this with Logan Lamusu at fullback, Freedom Crichton Rapati on one wing, and then Sienna Bonello on the other. Jasmine Rarani and Essence Arlo are in the centres. Shannon Latupu and Aliyah Sifan in the halves. Meadow Sivo and Shia Tokolich in the front row, with Bailey Marchong, the live wire dummy half, in there alongside them. You got Layla Kewick and Daniil Sekold on the edges in the back row, with the outstanding Fontaine Tafua at lock forward. On the interchange, Anika Penatani, Leonia Vay, who was an absolute handful last week. She'll be a big dynamic interchange player there. Kylia Gray and Aaliyah Scrivens rounding out their rotation. Mitzi Cairns is the 18th player, the reserve there. And taking on the second placed Roosters. And we mentioned all the time, 60s, that in the last year or so, and beyond that with the Roosters, but last year in particular, there's been 2 teams that have dominated the female space in the pathways, and that's the Roosters and the Bulldogs. So this is going to be a real big test for our girls.
Absolutely. And you're right about the form now of the Eels Lisa Fiaola Cup team. They are really building into this season after that really tough first round encounter with the Bulldogs. And to be fair, they really hadn't hit any sort of rhythm in that first round. And you can see now the combinations are building, the confidence is there in absolute spades within the team. And you can see the brand of football that they're playing. And they really wiped the floor with the Dragons last week. But, of course, they'd come into that game with already a couple of wins under their belt since that first round loss. They haven't. It's been wins since then. So it's a big test again this week. I mean, it's pretty tough, isn't it, that within your first 5 matches of the season that you draw both the Roosters and the Bulldogs,
as well as the Steelers, who are also not chump change.
Yeah, that's right.
In this
that's
grade,
right.
so they've had an almost to a T away up until most recently the St. George Dragons. So it's been a really tough run for both the Lisa Fiaola and the Tarsha Gale. Obviously, the Fiolas handled it better than their elder counterparts in the Gale. But, yeah, I hope that this is a case of iron sharpening iron, and the tough road trips will have them set up for a big run with the advantage at home as we move towards the run to the postseason. But, yeah, this is a big one.
I was just going to say, you mentioned a couple of players as you ran through the team list, and it's maybe unfair on a team that is functioning brilliantly as a team to single out some players, but Fontaine Tufunga was almost unstoppable.
Dynamic, yeah. She was creating tries, scoring tries, was just a live wire, and worked really great as a pod with her other middles.
What got me watching her was you can see the football intelligence. Mm-hmm. She was playing both sides of the ruck and getting into like a first or second receiver type position. You could see her calling for the play to come her way. She's got a real football intelligence about her, understands when to inject herself into the play. And you also mentioned the live wire player out of dummy half of Bailey Marchong. Definitely, like last week, she was off the bench and created havoc as soon as she was brought into the play. And look, the forwards work as a really cohesive unit. But the impact of Leonia Vey is that deserves mention as well.
Yeah, across the park, I don't feel like there's a real weakness in the team. Not to say that they don't have opposition teams that have more talent in different positional groups, but you don't look at the back line and say, wow, they struggle to defend, or the forward pack, they struggle to make meters. It's a very well-honed team. And like I said, they're really warming to some good form. And this game now at 9:45 a.m. on Saturday could end up really defining how the top 4 shakes out to some degree. So keen to see how they stand up. We'll
be there, mate. We'll be there. Starting our day out early, there'll be TCT coverage of the girls' junior rep matches. Unfortunately, and we'll get to this, the boys are on the road. They're at the Central Coast and Newcastle. It's just impossible for us to get out there for those matches, and they end up clashing with, I think maybe the SG Ball and itself ends up clashing with the New South Wales Cup game, and will be obviously at Combank Stadium in time for the New South Wales Cup game, just to be able to watch that. And then, of course, we finish our day with post-match at Parramatta Leagues Club. Yeah, so it's just a huge day for the Cumberland Throw.
Damn near 12 hours of work / spectating, so it's going to be good. But yeah, unfortunately, clashing is the name of the game when it comes to Saturday, and that's just the nature of the beast when you have 7 games.
7 games.
So that brings us to the second fixture on the day. Obviously, the Tarsha Gale, second fixture at Eric Tweedow, Tarsha Gale, 11:30 a.m. kickoff, and it's the Indigenous Academy for the Sydney Roosters. being played at home against the Parramatta Eels, so it's a home away from home game for the Eels. And in this case, the Eels come into the round, I believe, in 9th place, up against the surprisingly 60s, the 3rd place Roosters. That loss to Manly bumped them off both the Bulldogs and the Steelers, who are undefeated on the season. Eels haven't played both those teams, as we mentioned earlier. And for the Eels, if New South Wales Rugby League doesn't have any other modifications on their table, but with the Parramatta Eels table 60s, it mentions there's a gold line on the 8th place cutoff. So we have to get better clarification whether it is a top 8 in the junior reps. Though with the teams being expanded up to 17 teams in some cases, I wouldn't be surprised if they were under consideration for it. But if it is a top 8, it means the Eels are actually just outside on for and against, 10 points behind the Raiders. 1 win from 4 starts of both teams. 36 negative for the Raiders and 46 negative for the Eels. So this is a big game if they can steal a win here, and they still march on getting back into the finals provisionally, given that it is a top 8. For the Eels, though, if they're going to do that, it starts with his team. At fullback, Dallas Graham-Wivell, Aisha Rain Pietes on one wing and Hayley Bell on the other, Caitlin Pearden and Lindsay Tui in the centres, Rafaela Perigo and Aaliyah Hamano in the halves, Khaleesi Mahe, Roy Muir, who I thought was very impressive last week, and Liana Dimick are in the front row, Leela Black and Bella Sanford on the edges, Riverly Arlo at lock forward. On the interchange, Charlotte Cawthorn will be the utility, Michaela Bourne, Aaliyah Ganoom and Ciara Stockham, who made her debut last week, scored a try at the end as well. So a great little debut there for Ciara. Round out the interchange, Losaline Sikaheli is the reserve. And we're used to, in recent seasons, the Roosters absolutely dominating in the Tarsha Gale. They have been so far ahead of the curve in terms of having speed, the ability to play the ball across both edges, the power for the middle. They've done an incredible job identifying talent, and they've been the benchmark, even to the point that when the Dogs emerged last year as a strong contender, they still got done in the finals. So this is a incredible program for the Roosters, but they're not infallible. We saw them stumble last week, and if the Eels can get the job done here, suddenly they might have something to build for in the back half of the season.
Yeah, I think it's hard to do justice to describing you tried just then, and quite admirably, John, to do justice to the domination.
I don't think it really, expresses how good they've been.
No, anyone who has watched the Roosters Indigenous Academy play over recent years understands fully just how dominant they have been, even when it's been different players that have come into the team, entirely new lineups. Just the way that they play the game has been a revelation in watching female pathways, and other teams have had to rise to that. You mentioned last year about the Bulldogs, and the Bulldogs were so good last year that I believed they were a genuine chance of knocking over the Roosters. The Bulldogs played a real power game.
Yeah.
There's always been a lot of speed and a lot of skill in how the Roosters play their game. And I thought that the Bulldogs' power game really had the opportunity to take it to them. But as you said, the Roosters just found another gear and were able to hold on to the title that they seem to enjoy dominating for so long. Now, the Eels, turning to how we're likely to fare, it's been a matter of just not completing sets in those first few weeks. There was an improvement in that last week. It's not perfect. It's probably not quite where Shah Henry would want the team to be as far as completions are concerned. But we've spoken before about the skill that we were seeing in the team in attack, and it just wasn't getting a chance to fully realise itself in those games because the completions weren't there. We got a bit more of a glimpse of that last week. The forwards are extremely good with their second phase play. And I thought last week both the halves played well off that, Perigo and Halmona. So it'll be interesting to see, can they find something to challenge, because they have to find something more than what we saw last week to go with the Roosters. I think it's in them, but it comes down to those completions, doesn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely, mate. They enter this game, I think it's fair to say, realistically, as firm underdogs. You look at the body of work between the two teams, and the Eels have been good in the Tarsha Gale in recent seasons, but the Roosters have been the best. And even with the little slip-up last week, I think the Roosters deserve to enter this game as firm favourites, and it's going to take what we saw last week being the very baseline for their effort on Saturday. I thought they were good against the Dragons, and I mean, like, very good, but you're going to need more. And that's a tough ask when they were struggling for form coming into the round last week. To go from what we saw last week and then build on that will take a big step, but they've got talent. They can ask some serious questions of the Roosters Indigenous Academy, but it's going to be predicated on whether they can hold onto the ball and defend their goal line. I think they're the two core pillars of what's going to make them competitive on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we move on to the male portion of the junior pathways. And as you mentioned before, 60s not being played out at Eric Tweedale and also clashing across the timelines. We start in the Harold Matthews as a 12 o'clock p.m. kickoff as the Eels take on the Central Coast Roosters. The Roosters sort of got their fingers in a few pies in the junior pathways, and they've got their main team as well as the Central Coast branch as well. And this one's out at Woy Woy Oval, and the Eels enter the round technically undefeated alongside what happened with the Bulldogs last week. Both teams on 3 wins and a draw. With the Central Coast Roosters, where are they? They're in 7th for 2 wins from 4 starts. So they've actually had a pretty good start to the campaign. Eels named in one way, but we expect there could be at least one change, 60s, and I'll let you talk about that. But at fullback, it's Cyrus Bloomfield. We've got a new face in Samuel Mardini. I made the joke to him when I saw it. Did you take it shaken or stirred? That's a good surname there with Lorima Rokasuka on the other flank. Anders Johansson and Nathan Howard mean that the Eels have a relatively unchanged backline outside of Mardini right now. In the halves, Talon Rosati and Lincoln Fletcher have been very impressive, and they'll look to steer the team to victory on the weekend. Ryder Talangi and Ocean Vivelo, you talk about impressive, arguably the best pair of bookends in the competition in the Harold Matthews, I would say. Ezra Leota likewise has been very sharp at a dummy half. Michael Nauer and Samuel Polly, got them mixed up there, have been outstanding on the edges for the Eels and continue to hold that job this week. And for lock forward, late change last week and now being named the fishery in the 13 is Natutasina Leota, the brother of Ezra. On the interchange, Wesley Picoti, Billy Fanene, Kasinga Noah, and Sanjay Ulukini. The 2 reserves, Josiah Tuau and Michael Filalava. Yeah, so this is 3v7 on the ladder. And it's, obviously that means it's going to be a competitive game on paper, 60s, and B, when you have to make a trip to, Woy Woy, it's always going to be a challenge for the team to just lock in mentally between the big road trip on the bus and just getting used to, any disruptions that could be happening to the team, which you might be able to better inform us of.
Yeah, first of all, with regard to the Central Coast, if you think back to, I guess, going back about 7-8 years ago, the Central Coast team would have been considered to be one of the easier assignments. Mm-hmm. And that's not being disrespectful, but I think back at that stage, they weren't wearing the Roosters, or they didn't have the Roosters affiliation, or at least they weren't called Central Coast Roosters, if my memory serves me right. And I'm going back to the time when, back the days where Dylan Brown was running around in Harold Matts. So you might have a better recollection of that than me, John, but they've certainly built as in their junior reps in their Central Coast location. So as you said, they're in the top 8 at the moment, so they're going to be quite a worthy adversary this weekend. Late change, we will see Cyrus Bloomfield omitted from the team due to suspension. So he's received a 1-game suspension after he was sent off last week
for dissent.
For dissent, yes. So that's resulted in the judiciary giving him that 1 week.
It seems like just a really unfortunate series of events in the context of that game that led to the send-off and now sin bin. So
Yeah, we went into that in some depth in when we were talking about our
recap of the
reps.
weekend. Exactly. So anyone that listens to that understands why A, tempers were running hot, and B, why maybe. Yeah, I think everyone involved will learn from this and move on. And that's not me being critical of Cyrus. I feel like he might be as much a victim of circumstance as anything here. But yeah, what has happened has happened, and now the Eels need to move on. At fullback, what do you reckon? They bring in the other Rokosuka 60s, or is there?
That would seem like the logical thing, because he's had that game at fullback just a couple of weeks ago, so there's a familiarity there, and I guess that gives him the chance to build on that last game, and I'm sure he was able to use that as a learning experience. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't have the build of Cyrus.
To be fair,
no players do have that build of Cyrus. He's more of your live wire. I guess if you were to liken him to a fullback from recent years in the NRL, maybe like a Preston Campbell type of build and play that young Rokosuka provides. But we're just making an assumption right now. We don't know what the lineup is going to be. So, look, they are a very well-balanced team, and they are the sort of team that even though Cyrus Bloomfield is a significant part of the team through having that vital role within the spine, they won without Cyrus before. I expect them to be able to perform again without him, because, as I said, the rest of the team, it's a very well-balanced team. That you've got them, like, they're literally playing the sort of roles that if you're writing down the textbook definition of how the different positions on the field need to play the game to be successful, they're literally executing that. And there was the draw last week, I think, was more a reflection of the type of game that it was, where look, there was a bit of niggle in the game. I think it's fair to say in the first half they were put off their attacking game, just a bit. It became defence orientated. It became extremely physical, and look, they were able to match it there. A few things didn't go their way in the second half. We ended up with a draw. In the end, that may have been quite a fortunate result, given that last penalty attempt from the Bulldogs hit the upright from near in front. But, then again, Ryder Talagi was just his reflexes in catching that ball off the post.
Fantastic football IQ there. Yeah, really, really big play there.
I wish we were able to see this game live.
Yep.
But as you said, that's just impossible. But they're still undefeated in the competition, and we'll be looking forward to seeing them a bit closer to home in the coming weeks.
One thing we did forget to mention, we saw it in the game last week, but no Leviticus Funarayuta this week. He had a pretty bad rolled ankle, it looked like, on the ground last week. So I'm not sure what the damage is there in terms of missed or potential missed games, but we do wish him a speedy recovery. And to echo what you said, Sixties, this is a very well put together team. Just like you said, the players in each role almost perfectly mimic the archetype you'd expect from each role. Whether it's Fletcher being the organising half, Rosati being the running 5'8", for the back rowers who have been very impressive in Polly and Nower in their sort of modern roles as edge runners. So really good team, really fun to watch, and it's a shame we won't get to see them. Which brings us to the final junior rep fixture of the week, as the Eels take on the Newcastle Knights at St John's Oval, not in St John's Oval. We're not going to be playing in the ground itself. We're playing on the ground. 2:00 p.m. kickoff here, and this is another tough one. 60s. It feels like it's a lot of top four opponents or thereabouts for some of our teams in recent years or recent weeks. Sorry, not years. With the SG Ball taking on the third placed Newcastle Knights. They're 4 wins from 5 starts. Eels 3 wins from their 5 starts and have slipped. Just in the last 2 weeks. They were undefeated on the season through 3 rounds. Now, having dropped games against the Dragons, the Bulldogs, and before that the Sharks, not the Dragons. Now I need to right the ship, and they've got a few changes this week. We start at fullback with a new face in Oliver McCarthy. Then you've got, as expected, the two flankers who have been quite good, Mo Almadine and Dom Ferrugia. It's in the centres, you've got another change. Corey Lee comes into the team after being I think he was at fullback 1 week and then on the interchange another. He's now at centre. Devonta Vivella is the other centre. Unchanged in the halves with Lorenzo Talatana and Dylan Brettle reuniting. In the front row, you've got Javan Stevenson-Harler and Kirby Herford making his season debut. We obviously know Kirby from playing in the Harold Mats prior, but he makes his first cap this year. Lockie Koinakis is at dummy half. Josiah Funayuta and Tyrese Lekeni, part of an unchanged back row that also features Max Popo at lock forward. On the interchange, Tyson Sangalang will bring some energy and effort there with Seb Piakula slipping back from the starting team to the interchange rotation. Bo Lucian, and we get our first look at a North Queensland recruit, Elijah Shane Tapau, 60s. So, we don't get to see him in person this week, but hopefully you can detail us a report once you review the footage from the game. The two reserves, Jai Camilleri, who's been kicked back to the 18th man, bit of a surprise there with Dakota Kakoi. They've got it listed Camilleri and Kakoi in that order, but the jersey's backwards. So Camilleri in the 19, Kakoi in the 18. It's suffice to say that if they repeat their efforts of the last two outings, they're going to get dusted up by the Knights 60s. But by the same token, we know that this team can play some pretty good football.
Yeah. When you just said if they perform like they did the last 2 weeks, what we're talking about is errors, poor completions. Now, if you're making those sorts of mistakes in a game, you're literally handing the match on a platter to the opposition. That's what happened with the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs only recorded their second victory of the season last week, and the Eels probably just need to have a look in the mirror as to why things went wrong last week, because every time they looked like they were getting their game together, they turn over possession. And we saw that they have a great resilience within the team to be able to fight back from being behind, which they were in this game.
There are limits, though.
But there are limits, and you're not going to fight back from behind if you keep handing the ball back to the opposition and saying, no, have another go. We feel like doing a bit more tackling.
Especially if the kickoff errors too.
Oh, so, yeah. And those sorts of things are just killers, coach killers. So what we're looking for from them this week is get those completion rates much higher. Don't hand territory and possession to the opposition. And then they're in with a chance because, as you said, we've seen what the team is capable of. And they started the season with 3 wins on the trot. But just like winning can be a habit, losing can be a habit. So they need to break that cycle, or at least break the cycle of the errors this week. And that's going to go a long way towards them getting back on the winners list.
Yes, indeed. And like the Tarsha Gale, I think they enter this game as pretty solid underdogs, given the calibre of their opposition. But similar to the girls, if they hold on to the ball, defend their goal line well, I think they're the two cornerstones that will put them into the box seat or to be competitive. We know they've got strike on the flanks. Almadine and Ferrugia are very good on the wings. The forwards have got some big boppers. Funai Uta and Lekeni are tireless and big wrecking balls on the edges. So if they can just get into a position to attack the Knights consistently, I think they'll be, competitive. And like I said earlier, keen to see. I'm not expecting too much, given that he's been named on the interchange and he's got some pretty established forwards ahead of him in the back row. But Elijah Shane Tapau will be fun to see see how he fits into the Eels with his debut.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alrighty, that's the end of the junior representative pathways games this week. Brings us to the 3 major games in the senior branch, starting with the Jersey Flegg. And unfortunately, again, probably won't be able to see this one, 60s. It marks the 3rd game played at Eric Tweedhouse Stadium on Saturday after the two, the Fiaola and the Gale games. But as you mentioned on the news podcast, unless you happen to park at the club and then book the Uber, it's probably going to be difficult to find both parking and timing to get to the New South Wales Cup game. So we might have to wait for a report on this one. But the Eels, and we talked about this team on Teamless Tuesday in the news podcast, got a pretty fun team here. At fullback, it's Arpa Twiddle. Got a couple of got a few new faces in the backline, sorry. Tamarere Simons and Charlie Skorovi are on the wings. Araz Namva, who is a Parramatta junior that we know of, in the centres, alongside Eric Va'a Forsanga. Josh Lynn will steer the team around alongside Mitchell Chester in the halves. So obviously Chester, another new acquisition there for the club. In the front row, and this is really not to diminish the backline, it's going to be fun to figure out, sort of their talents and identity, but on paper, this forward pack really stands out, and it starts with Sam Tuivasa and Saxon Pryke in the front row. Outstanding pair of bookends there for the Jersey Flegg. Rowie Smith came to the Eels from Penrith, and he'll be a handy dummy half there. In the back row, Will Latu, Jock Brazel, and Max Tupou lend some very good experience to this team. They've been part of the Jersey Flegg program for a year or two now, and they'll be core parts of the leadership group there on the field. On the interchange, it's Paddy Spence as a utility, and then a trio of big units in Lance for Lima, Damascus Nemia, another new face from Queensland, and then LeBron Tuala, who we hope can stay healthy this year. Had some real bad luck of injuries in his debut season as an Eel. Will Lewis is the 18th man, and we mentioned in the last podcast, 60s, but unlucky to miss out this week, and that's the nature of how loaded that forward pack is, and he'll get his chances at some point this season.
Yeah, and we've also not seeing either of the Stratus twins, who have been a mainstay of the SG Ball and Harold Matt's teams as they've come through the system. And again, an indication of the strength of the forward pack in this particular grade, that those boys aren't making an appearance in the team. So now you mentioned a couple of players. One of our mates in Derek sent me some information on Mitchell Chester, and he says a Glenmore Park junior. He thinks he may have played at the Hills Bulls briefly at one stage, played in the halves for South in Pathways, and last year was at the Tigers, and that he was at Hills Sports High as well.
There's definitely a connection there for the club to have gotten some good tape on him or a good insight on him.
Yeah, so that's the mail that we've been given there. So thanks to Derek for that. But yes, you mentioned the Eels pack. So you've got Sam Tuivasa, Saxon Pryke, and Jock Brazel, who have been and then also Josh Lynn at 5'8", who have been part of the NRL pre-season and continue to train full time. So you've got some real quality players within this team who have obviously been earmarked for bigger things down the track. And of course that obviously falls into their hands about what opportunities they take with it. But it's also our first look at a number of players, although the look won't actually be able to happen this week. I was hoping that we'd be able to get to maybe watch half of the game, but even that's going to be a challenge, really, to travel from over at Eric Tweedale Stadium at half time, get to Combank Stadium, get parking, get in there for the start of the New South Wales Cup. So it's a really unfortunate timing with regard to the Jersey Flegg. It's a pity that they couldn't have had 3 matches at Combank Stadium this week.
Yeah, have the old-fashioned triple header.
Yes, yeah. Now, there's obviously the economics of it that come into staging 3 games and having the gates open earlier and the staffing there and also the food outlets open for what is a smaller crowd when you're talking about lower grade football. But I don't know. I long for the nostalgia of those days when you could be at match day and see all the players that are coming through the system. And not only that, I mean, you've got players, as I mentioned, like Sam and Saxon and Jock Brazel and Josh Lynn, who have been part of the NRL, and now they're playing at a suburban ground rather than being at,
we talk
curtain
about
raiser match.
that disconnect, don't we, about in the
Yes.
pathways, and it's not exclusive to the Parramatta Eels. It's a problem with the code
No.
itself. That,
Yes, that's right.
You go from being, so I mean, obviously they're not close to playing it NRL as in like this year or next week or whatnot, but you go from being so close, being in the setup and being with all the full timers, all the representative players that are at the Parramatta Eels, and then you're playing at you're playing at Woy Woy or Eric Tweedale or something like that, where again, no disrespect to Eric Tweedale and whatnot, they serve an important purpose for the junior reps and whatnot, but when it comes to the Jersey Flegg, when you're 2 steps below the NRL, it kind of it creates that big disconnect, and it's unfortunate that the scheduling ends up the way it does, with the tier 1 venues being so in demand and protected, understandably protected for the turf quality, but yeah, it would have been nice to start the season at the very least with a triple header.
Yeah, and it also carries on too with New South Wales Cup, doesn't it? When they're
absolutely.
not drawn at a stadium and they're at a suburban ground somewhere and playing in front of a few hundred people. And it's often good for us to be able to go and watch that because you get to hear a different element of the game. You're probably a little bit closer. You can hear the calls on the field. In instances, you might be able to grab a few minutes with the players after the game, because it's not unusual for when it's these sort of fields that they're there and they're talking to people on the sideline after the game. But you have to put yourself in the position of the players, and I'm sure they would love to be running out onto the main stadium. If they're not in the first grade team, then they're running out before the first grade goes on, and they're playing to the same fans. So anyway, mate, we best move on with the
That's
New South Wales
our soapbox moment of the week. Yes, we would like to see better interconnectedness between Jersey Flegg, New South Wales Cup, and the NRL in terms of match day. And I'm sure that's a sentiment echoed by a lot of fans. But yeah, getting on to the New South Wales Cup, and this is a game that we will be in attendance for as part of a doubleheader at Combank Stadium for round 1. 3:05 p.m. kickoff, so I imagine gates will open probably about 3 o'clock, maybe 2:55 p.m. This one is on Foxtel, and I assume KO as well. So if you can't get out there live, you have a chance to watch it via pay TV or online. And the Eels, and we mentioned again on Team West Tuesday, this is a bit of a mixed bag team for mine 60s. Some really exciting components, some good familiar pieces there too in the forward pack, and also perhaps showcasing our lack of depth in the back line as well. But we start at fullback with Blaize Talagi, obviously one of the real exciting parts of the preseason, and seeing his transition to fullback and how he starts that journey towards potentially an NRL debut at some point. On the flanks, it's Isaac Lumi and Hayes Dunster. Samuel Louisio and Saxini are in the centres. Dejan Arce and Ethan Sanders round out a pretty good halves pairing there for the New South Wales Cup level. In the front row, Ofahiki Ogden and Kai Rodwell will be the 2 bookends alongside young Matt Arthur, another reason to be really excited about what we see on the weekend. Then you got Matt Dury and Luca Moretti on the edges, Makahesi Makatoa at lock forward. On the interchange, Manny Luke is the rotation dummy half. Dan Keir, Charlie Guymer and Brock Parker round out the rotational pieces in the pack. Obviously very excited about the 2 last names there, 60s Guymer and Parker. 2 very good prospects in the forwards, and a chance to carve out a bit more playing time for them with good showings this week.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting about how this game is played, because you look at some of the experience in the Bulldogs back line, and it contrasts obviously to the Eels experience in the back line. And then you look at the pack, and whilst there's some experience there in the Bulldogs pack, you also look at the I think that's a very strong Eels pack that will be going out to play. And I think to me it's obvious where the Eels will be looking to win this game, and I think likewise I think the Bulldogs will probably be looking to shift the ball as much as they can. Yeah. So it may well be a contrast in styles.
It's a very good backline for the Bulldogs. They've got obviously a couple of NRL caliber players there, and Jarrell Skelton, who got a look last year and is a big, powerful unit on the wing. Bronson Sherry obviously making his comeback from a drug ban. And then Joash Papali is actually probably perhaps their highest rated, I think, prospect. He's been very good in the junior pathways across the last couple of years and now moves into senior football. So seeing Talagi up against Papali will be very interesting. And yeah, this is a big test for the Eels. The Dogs, they weren't a dominant team in the Cup last year, but they were very solid. And I think they dusted up the Eels the 2 times that they met. So they're going to have to be on their toes come kickoff 3:05 p.m. And yeah, we'll get a real good look at how the lessons from the preseason have been digested for some of those young guys. We talked about Ethan having, it wasn't like he was terrible against Canberra, but that was, I think, a real welcome to senior football moment for him, and about the speed of the game and the physicality. And hopefully he's taking that on board and can steer the team around and be the player that we know he is. So that's
and I think, John, just to interrupt there, the inclusion of Matt Arthur at dummy half will be interesting to see how that then plays out with Ethan Sanders, because you've got Ethan and Blaize and Matt Arthur that have that connection coming through the pathways, and there's something to be said about the understanding that's there as well between Arthur and Sanders. And I think Ethan plays some very, very good football with the service from Matt Arthur. And so it'll be interesting to see, because obviously Budsy copped that knock in his first tackle, the first tackle that he made in that trial, which then put him off for the head bin, and then it also meant that he had to sit out the second trial with concussion protocols. So this will be the first game at a senior level that we're seeing those two being able to partner up at dummy half and halfback. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we had a very good insight into how strong those combinations can be when we watch the SG Ball Premiership run and the deep finals run for the Jersey Flegg with the same players linking up through the spine. So really keen to see what they can do in senior football now. And, we mentioned the lack of backline depth for the Eels, players like Talagi in particular, but, Ethan Sanders as well, given that there could be opportunities around Origin time. This, first half of the New South Wales Cup season, it's going to be big for them. They can really press claims towards, an eventual NRL debut. So keen to see how
they have to go. They have to go through this apprenticeship, really, don't they, John? Because they were standout players, and we're not just talking about Blaize and Ethan and Budsy, but we're also talking about Charlie Guymer coming off the bench there, that and also as well Brock Parker, because he was playing in the Jersey Flegg last year on their deep run, and he was probably if maybe their most consistent forward.
He was a rock for
the
Flegg
entire
last year.
season.
Yeah, really
and,
good.
Yeah, so he was an integral component for the Jersey Flegg team. So, but now we're talking about playing senior football, so it's no longer age restricted for them. It's what can you do against more seasoned players. So, yeah, an important apprenticeship, and it will be a guide really as to, certainly the first half of the season is going to be a guide to how quickly they might be transitioned, or, whether it's going to be a slower build for some of these players to head towards NRL.
Well said, mate. And that brings us to the main event and the second part of the doubleheader at CommBank Stadium on Saturday evening, 5:30 p.m. kickoff. It's the big derby game for the two Western Sydney rivals, Parramatta Eels hosting the Canterbury Bulldogs. Look at the Dogs team quickly, 60s as we always want to do in the NRL preview. We've got Blake Taff at fullback, Blake Wilson on one wing with Josh Adokar on the other. Jacob Kiraz is in the centres this year. He'll partner Stephen Crichton there. Matt Burton and Drew Hutchison in the halves. And coming into this season, I would have said that was a surprise based on having Toby Sexton in the team. I would have thought he would have been the preferred halfback choice, but Hutchison was pretty clearly the number one half choice through their trial program, 60s. In the front row, the recently re-signed Max King had a 3-year contract extension with the Bulldogs. He partners Pawasa Reed Marnie at dummy half. Viliami Kikau and Jacob Preston are in the back row as part of a very good edge pair there. Jamin Salmon, new recruit, lock forward. Kurt Mann, Samuel Hughes, Josh Curran and Curtis Moran are on the interchange. Bronson Sherry, Toby Sexton, Jake Turpin, Connor Tracy, who I imagine has just been named. Okay, if he was available to play, he would have been playing. And Kitione Katoa are part of the extended roster. Yeah, that Tracy inclusion is a bit of a head scratcher. I know that as Eels fans, we're used to late in the season sometimes seeing a player that we have a pretty good idea is injured being part of the top 23 on Team West Tuesday, but see it round one is a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, it is. Isn't this a completely different looking Bulldogs team to last year?
Yeah, well, what we've got, obviously the promotion of Wilson on one wing, but then externally you've got Taff, Crichton, Hutchinson, Farmasuli, Salmon, Mann, Curran. So that is a huge portion of the team there that's been brought in externally from one year to the next. Yeah,
and although he's had a bit of a taste of first grade last year, Sam Hughes starting the season on the bench as well, the former Eels pathway star who at one stage in the COVID-affected season was really getting close to getting a start off the interchange bench. And we're talking about, like years ago with this. So it's taken him a while to get back to this level again, but he's a massive unit, just a massive human being. So we're always pleased to see young people being able to achieve their dreams and play NRL. When they're former Eels players, doesn't mean that we aren't happy for them. We just don't like them to go so well when they play against us.
Exactly.
There's that. And, mate, just before we go into the Eels team, we're almost at the stage where today with the 7 grades of football, we might have even had to use a bit of intermission music like we do in the news podcast.
I'll tell you what, if there's another massive preview next week, then we have to consider it. Yeah, have to get some specialised preview music.
Mate, it's just more opportunity for you to expose our listeners to the great variety of music that you find out there, and then when it gets to the Spotify playlist, there'll just be a few more tracks on there that you'll be able to add.
Well said. Yeah, difficult to pass this Bulldogs team 60s. Obviously, utility value is through the roof. Taff, Mann, Salmon, even Hutchison in the halves gives them incredible flexibility to adapt to a game situation should things go astray from the game plan. But yeah, I mean, you can't take them too lightly. But at the same time, the Eels have had good head-to-head success against the Bulldogs in recent years, and we'll get to the Eels team now. But we mentioned on the Team West Tuesday podcast that it was 3 straight and then 7 of the last 8, barring that one big ambush in 2022 that sort of left us all a little bit surprised when the Dogs put 30 points on us. So yeah, the Eels have had the better of the head-to-head recently. But round one's always a bit weird, as we saw last year, where you can get in a rut and be very hard to get out of it. So if the Eels are to start strong this year, they're going to do it with this team, and it starts at fullback with their captain, Quinton Gufferson. Then on the wings, Bowie Simonson moves from left centre to left wing with the suspension of Mike Acevo. Sean Russell will be on the right flank, and he'll work with Will Penasini, whereas Bowie Simonson will be partnering the man he was actually competing with for that centre role initially in Morgan Harper. So I'm going to be interested to see how they go. And like we mentioned with Clint, there's actually probably an important subplot here about how successful this partnership is and what sort of competition that puts towards Mike Acevo, asking him to return serve in round 4. In the halves, no surprises. Dylan Brown and Mitchell Moses. Likewise in the front row, no one was expecting anything but big Reagan Campbell-Gillard and Junior Barlow at bookend. Joey Lussick has won the starting hooking role, but we knew that going back a bit. Sean Lane will be on the left edge. Bryce Cartwright on the right. Jermaine Hopgood will be the lock forward. Brendan Hands, the utility and dummy half option on the interchange. And Brad Arthur's been saved some, stress when it came to Team West Tuesday by the injury, the short-term injury, thankfully, to Wirra McGregor, who has a minor hamstring strain. That means that he can just pick a very straightforward interchange of Ryan Madison, Joe Ofahengahi, and Kelma Tuolangi. Extend the roster. Starts with Offa Ogden as the 18th man, Dejan Arce in the second reserve role, and then the extended roster beyond that is Luca Moretti, Makahesi Makatoa, and Blaize Talagi. Good to see Blaize there or thereabouts. We know that doesn't mean he's going to be playing NRL in the next few weeks, but he's obviously in the ballpark, which is always good to see.
Can I just add there as well? I think that's interesting for the way that the Eels are approaching this with naming Blaize, is that in one sense they're not hiding him. It's all very well to be able to protect a player and not overhype someone. And I think with this approach where he's named on extended reserves list, that the supporters, the greater number of supporters become familiar with his name.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's not like there's a big hype around it. It's like a familiarization, if you like. So I like that. I'm not one for pretending that someone's not a talent coming through, because it's silly. People, like the people that watch Pathways football, know who to look out for. And Blaize is going to take some time before he's looking at a regular spot or even maybe an NRL debut. It's not about to happen immediately. But I think this is a good approach that his name is added to the extended reserves list, and he's not being hidden away as such.
And I can't find any reference to it now. It seems like there could be a reshuffle coming with people being available, but I do recall when team lists were initially named that Grant Atkins was attached to this game as the primary referee, but I'm going through NRL.com, ParramattaEels.com, and I can't find any reference to that at the moment. So not sure if that means there's been an official reshuffle of the officials, but yeah, I have to wait and see. But yeah, Eels, look, 60s last year, a lot was said, and for good reason, about our slow start. And I say slow start, it was 3 4-point losses in a row where the Eels did everything but win, essentially, in those games against Melbourne, Cronulla, and who was the third team? Penrith. Penrith we beat. So it was Melbourne, Cronulla.
Was it
Manly?
I think was it Manly in there?
Yes, it was at Manly, wasn't it? It was at Manly, yeah. So let me just double check that. But to say it was frustrating it was Manly, was an understatement, and it really ended up being a defining, sequence of, even that early in the season, it was a defining sequence of losses that put us so far behind the 8 ball and left us scrambling through injury and suspension and some bad luck and some bad play later in the season that left us literally a game short of the top 8, even with all the other setbacks we had. So
they were all goal kicking as well, where missed kicks or extra penalty kicks, I can't remember, for the opposition, but definitely some missed kicks proved to be the difference between the teams in terms of the scoreboard. But there were also, there were tough calls that went against them, bad luck that went against them, and also maybe some opportunities not taken. So there were all the factors that you can get in there that could contribute to a loss, and they seem to all happen in each game. All the contributing factors were there. Not to mention players that weren't available, like Matto for the first 3 rounds last year. But it just built from there, didn't it? Be it through injury or suspension, that they just weren't getting their team on the field. And I think and Sean Lane was out at the start of the year.
Yeah, because he broke his jaw in the trial against Newcastle. Yeah.
So we went into the season with players who had moved on from the year before. And I think from memory, when we got to that first round, there might have been something like only 7 or 8 players from the grand final 17 that took the team. That's just off the top of my head. That's not me. Don't, if I haven't got that figure right, don't jump down my throat. But there was a significantly reduced number of players from the grand final that took the field in round 1 due to departures and due to injury and suspension. So it was yeah, it was the perfect storm for a rough start to the year. And let's face it as well, that first game against the Storm went to extra time. And it went to extra time on the back of the roughest call that you'd ever see against Josh Hodgson, where he was ruled to have interfered with a play the ball that was just on the Storm side of halfway. This was approaching, I think, full time from memory, and the Eels were penalised. And I think we even might have done a captain's challenge on it and lost the captain's challenge. And I think it was in the following week, it was deemed that it was a mistake. And I think the Storm should have been penalised for an incorrect play the ball.
Yep.
And you can imagine what that might have done for the end of the game, because if it had been a penalty to the Eels, and I'm not sure whether that's a penalty or a turnover off the top of my head, but if it had been a penalty, it was straight in front, a long distance. Moses may well have had a crack at penalty goal.
Yep.
From there. At the very least, they would have worked down for a shot at field goal at the concluding part of the game. Maybe the game doesn't go to full time, go to extra time. So, look, incidents like that made for a start to the season that was just, as you said, like, it was awful to be behind the eight ball literally from the opening round last year. Tough opponent, with the Storm having such a long run of never losing first round games. Maybe that is broken this year when they play the Panthers. But we've got to get off to a strong start. The advantage, of course, is playing at home. The players should be absolutely primed to perform from the opening whistle of the opening game this year. There is no way that we would expect anything but players being mentally tuned in for this one. So, I guess now we dig into how we expect it to play out.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier that the Eels have had the ascendancy between the two teams in recent seasons, and I think that should stay true on Saturday, but there is always that degree of uncertainty in round one about which team's just going to have the confidence and the fluency when they hit the ground, from the opening whistle. And sometimes you can, as we saw last year, get a bit bogged down. I look at the Bulldogs team, Sixties, and they're really odd. They've got, obviously Stephen Crichton's a world-class centre. Viliama Kikau, likewise in the back row. Jacob Preston was a big breakout player for them. But it feels like they do lack strike. They're going to be opportunists. They're going to look for errors from the Eels, look for some, second phase play, some repeat sets or, piggyback sets on the back of penalties and six agains, and that's where they're going to strike. The Eels need to just minimise that stuff. Like, you're going to give away penalties, you're going to drop the ball, it happens. But you can't create sequences where you're feeding the Bulldogs prolonged possession and territory, because that's where they're going to get a foot in the door and be competitive.
I'm also very wary of a trick play involving Josh.
Yes, they do love an early kick, Burton to Carr in this case. So it's going to fall on Simonson and Russell and Gufferson to be awake to that threat. And even then, if it's well executed, it's just going to be hard to defend that sometimes. The early kick with an absolute speed to, screaming after the ball, even when you know it's coming, can be hard to stop.
Yeah, and you mentioned about who needs to be aware. So it's not just the wing opposite. It's the fullback, because Gutho, with fullbacks defending in the line, once you start to head towards the red zone, you can just see that there's an opportunity for a chip over the top, or a chip into the in goal with the Addo Carr chasing through. If you're not awake to it, if you're the winger's slow to chase, if Gutho's, there's every chance Gutho's going to be caught not in the ideal position to cover for it. it's just one of the things that happens with fullbacks in the modern game, that fullbacks defend in the line or take their place in the line, fill up the space, and then as the line moves forward, they try to track the ball as best they can. But teams can be very, very good at drawing the fullbacks into going the wrong way, whether it be, a pass that goes one way from dummy half, but then quickly there's a reversal of the play, or you get the ball going to someone who sweeps in and they have a change of direction. Like there's ways that they can get that happening with a fullback. So I think Gutho really needs to be his best version of Gutho in terms of that defensive hustle. We know how highly he rates in the NRL for his defensive capabilities, but when you've got someone as fast as Josh Addo-Carr, and it's going to be the same when you play Manly with Jason Saab, and we saw already that the Sea Eagles have every intent of using a player like that who has exceptional pace, and with Saab has height to go with it, that they were ready for trick plays, and I reckon we're going to see that with the Bulldogs. But looking at the two teams, it's not going to be unexpected that the Eels are going to play that power game through the forwards. And I'm expecting the Eels to be much more patient with what they do this year. Now, we've seen in some opening rounds in the past, and let me throw in the opening round against the Titans a couple of years back, where it was like a game of touch football.
Oh, yeah. The infamous one where Sean Russell ended up with broken ribs for half the season.
Yes, yeah. Now, there was criticism in the second half when we had Jake Arthur came on due to there was a backline injury, and I think from memory it might have been that Dylan Brown shifted out to centre.
And then the centre went to wing, and then Arthur into the halves,
Yeah, and when Arthur came into the halves, and people were complaining that the attacking play that was seen in that first half suddenly wasn't on display. Well, I'd argue that we were playing touch football and the Titans were keeping pace with us in that first half. There was an awful lot more patience that was shown in the second half, and rather than being under threat, the Eels pretty much controlled possession and territory in the second half. And although we all like to see bright attacking football, and no doubt the Eels will still produce bright attacking football, you have to get that platform right. The more defensive pressure and workload that you create for the opposition, the better it is for your attacking football as the game progresses, because you build fatigue in the opposition. If you're turning over the ball in trying to be too expansive too quickly, you're not asking anything of the defence. If you ask plenty of questions physically of the defence, then you're creating the opportunity to fatigue them and to, as I said, build. Once you get to that point where the defence starts to get passive or on the back foot, or they're just not getting back in time, that's when you can really open up. And the Eels have got players who can open that up. We've got the forwards. So many of the forwards have a good offload in them. Even Reg, who wasn't renowned for his offloads, he's now a player who can get that ball.
An offload. Yeah, he has.
Yeah. Yes. So I'm expecting that the Eels will play that power game. As I said, I'm not Einstein in saying that, but I'm also suggesting that is the way to get the win. I know there's a lot of people don't like it. People are critical of the chase the collision mantra, but that's actually how you win games of football. Win the middle.
Well,
belt up the opposition.
What do people think? What do you think people? What was it called? Tentative Penrith's free beat. Like
yes.
they have dominated the collision. They've dominated the middle, not just through forwards, but through their outstanding back three as well. or back four if you count back someone like Tariva playing in the centre sometimes. So yeah, absolutely. There's a reason why you want to be winning the collision and dominating the ruck. And for the Eels, that starts this week against the Bulldogs. I think they are in a position to do that. The starting pack, Campbell, Gillard and Barler up against King and Farmasili. The Dogs back row, I think, is one of their strengths, but Lane and Cartwright do match up nicely against Kikau and Preston. And then on the interchange, well, you'd hope that Madison, Open-Gargi and Talagi can make a dent in this one as part of the second and third rotation. So, yeah, I think this game is here for the Eels to lose. They've got a good team. The Burton bomb might be a concern for that reshuffle backline, but it's a concern for every team. If he strikes it sweet, every fullback and back three are going to be sweating bullets. That's just the nature of that sort of kick. And yeah, I come into this game feeling confident after what we saw from the Gold Coast trial. I think that both sides of the ruck are now primed for big seasons. If Sean Lane is healthy, if Dylan Brown is locked in, the left edge, I think, sort of figures itself out there, regardless who's in centre and wing. I think just those two players alongside Gufferson chiming in down that edge make them a threat for, a sort of great try-scoring run for whoever's on the wing down there. It'll be Bailey this week, so that's one there. But on the flip side, the right edge looked electric against the Titans. Moses, Cartwright, Penasini, and Russell, who I think is the most popular tip across the fan base for the breakout player of the year. He looks like a guy that can really solidify himself as a good NRL player on that right wing now. Yeah, there is every reason to be confident here. Like we said, minimising those runs of possession for the Bulldogs is going to be key. But I think that the Eels come out and they're going to look to make a statement after what happened last year, both at the start of the season where they stumbled and then the back end of the season where they couldn't quite punch a ticket to the finals even with all those injuries. And yeah, this is a chance to, as we say, you don't lose a premiership in March and April, but you can very much put yourself outside the running. So they want to make a statement here, start strongly, and position themselves to navigate what could be a bit of a tricky stretch early on in their draw, because next week it's I believe it's the Sharks, is it? It's Panthers. It's Panthers at Penrith, and then you got Manly at CommBank. So it's two really tough games coming up, and you want to bank that win this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Because look, if the Eels can get through this early stretch of games, it stands them in terrific stead at the start of the season. And the Eels' finals appearances in recent years have been based on getting the first round win,
3, 4, 5 wins in a row often,
and then getting those wins in a row, so that they're sitting up there in the top four through the early part of the season. They've even been sitting in the top two in the early part of the season in recent years. So they want to get that. You look at the Eels pack, and I've said it time and time again, it is a pack which, if you saw it listed in a premiership team, you go, oh yeah, okay, I can see that. I mean, it is, the forwards are literally that strong. And then when you've got the sort of players that we've got coming off the interchange, you go, okay, you don't expect that there's going to be too many flat spots when players are rotated. So, look, it's obviously the spine will then be crucial after the forwards lay the platform. And we've got I guess the biggest question for supporters is defensively on the left edge. But to point out the obvious, you've got Dylan Brown defending on that left-hand side, and that is critical. Like, he is an outstanding edge defender, and then it's all about communication, isn't it? And look, all teams operate a very similar defensive pattern, compressed and slide. You're not going to see too much different from that. You might see a different system that happens in different parts of the field, but being able to slide across is just a common trait of of the Eels, and all the teams. And we even saw last in round 0 over in Las Vegas, where South, they're still scoring those tries out on the wing, particularly with Johnson, where they're able to catch opposition's compressed defences and get on the outside of them. They're just the past masters at doing that. But you will see every team scored against because of a compressed defence where the attack just works and works and works on those numbers. And there will be times when they can get it done. Now, you can look at the decisions of the wingers and the centres, and, yeah, when it falls apart, normally one of them has been forced into a decision that's maybe not ideal. Maybe they've fallen out of the system. Sometimes it's even the players further in that have fallen out of the system. And then what ends up happening, everyone on the outside is impacted by what happens with the player on their inside. So you only need someone to get it wrong just on the edge of the ruck, and the flow-on effect can be right across to the wing. So sometimes it's individual players that you might be able to point the finger at. And as I said, the systems, they're just so common across the teams that it might only be minor differences that talk about the relative success or failures of wing defences. So
Yeah, you're always chasing the latest trend in the NRL, and if you're not the trendsetter, you're part of the pack chasing the peloton. So that's just how it works in professional sports. Things will settle into a meta where the most efficient strategy is, or currently the most efficient strategy is deployed until someone takes a risk and can do something different that is more effective against what is established. So, like I said, South's going to continue to score tries with the way they work the ball down their excellent backline. And yeah, defensively, the Eels, like most teams' competition, are in that slide formation now. So it's just about communication. And you're going to get scored on. That's how it works. But you've got to minimise that opportunity.
Yeah, and I think we saw in the trial where there was a lot of criticism of Sivo with his defence was where he was making that decision to jam.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, either the timing was wrong or the communication wasn't good from what was happening inside him. But in terms of the system itself, it's a matter of how the players either stick to it or fall out of it. And then sometimes, did they execute the tackle itself?
Yep.
So anyway, we move on, mate. We're probably at that stage now where it's time for our big tips about the game. So we've got to do our winning margin, our first try scorer, and our best on field predictions. I'll let you lead off.
Alrighty. So I've got the Eels winning this one, and I think it's going to be a solid win. That could spiral into something bigger, but I'll go in the sort of vicinity of 26, 28 points for to 8 to 10 points against. With the first try scorer coming from someone down the right edge. I think Will Penasini is going to be involved. He's just looked in outstanding touch. So maybe he won't score it. Maybe he'll link up with Mitchell Moses to put over his halfback. Best on field. I mean, Will's obviously going to be in the conversation if I believe he has any sort of game like I sort of implied there, but it's always hard to go past one of the halves, given just how much they handle the ball. So I think Dylan Brown's going to have a big year, but I think that on Saturday it'll be Mitchell Moses that comes off with best on field.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to tip a 30-14 win to the Eels. First try scorer, let's go with the big tip for the breakout season in Sean Russell. And as for best on field, you know what? I'm going to go for Big Reg. I think he's primed for a big season. He's trained well. He's really embraced the role of being a senior player, a leader within the team. So, yeah, big match for Big Reg.
I like it. I like it a lot. And of course, this one is at 5:30 p.m. live. Catch it at the stadium if you can, but otherwise on Fox Sports or KO. And if you're sticking around, you can see myself and 60s in the bistro from 8 o'clock p.m. We obviously got those two incredible guests in Steve Ella and Dave Lydiard, alongside a potential mystery guest that comes from a different discipline, but would be a fantastic name to have on the show. So we really look forward to seeing if we can get our mystery guest on board. But as always, thank you guys for stopping by and giving us a listen. It's always a blast to preview the big slate of games, 7 of them on one day. We get it done by way of our sponsors, Big Swing Golf, North Mead, and Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, and Parramatta, as well as all you guys listening in and giving us support. So much appreciated. 60s, suffice to say, we are massively excited for the weekend. I think there's only one way to sign off on the podcast.
Well, first of all, see you at Paraleagues at the podcast. And as always say, go you mighty Eels.